So you want to break into advertising and you're thinking to yourself, shit, what now? Well, in this episode, I talked to Rose Herceg. She's the Chief Strategy Officer of WPP AUNZ, and she's also a published author, with one of her books being The Power Book. Would highly recommend reading if you get the chance. Within that book, she talks about a whole range of different things that you can do to get ahead in your career, but I think a lot of those can be applied, especially when you're coming from that world of academia to the world of work. As always, please like, share and subscribe, and enjoy the episode. Hey Rose, welcome to Shit What Now. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me, Chris.
Rose, for those who are looking to break into the world of academia, can you tell us a bit about, well, not academia, sorry. What's the matter with you, boy? Advertising. Tell us a bit about who you are and what you do.
Sure. I am currently the Chief Strategy Officer of WPP, both across Australia and New Zealand. And I want everybody to have one thought in their head as I am talking. I am somebody who spent the bulk of their career self-employed in small business and then jumped into the hierarchy of a corporate world. So a lot of what we're going to be talking about is the kind of stuff that will hopefully help those graduates make their own way.
Brilliant. And you kind of effectively answered the next question, which was, how did you break into advertising? But you kind of just took your own path, really. So you didn't break in, you just smashed through.
No, I had one job. I've only ever had one job before I became self-employed, and that was as a woman in dispatch. I started in dispatch at a small agency in Sydney, but big globally, called Ammirati Puris Lintas. And they had an ad in the paper for a job for dispatch. And the same day, I got a job as a cadet for the Sydney Morning Herald. I flipped a coin. I applied for the dispatch job. I got the dispatch job in the days in the late 90s when there were still kids working in dispatch. And that was my first and only kind of job. But I guess what I did was, the minute I got in, I moved up very quickly. I was within 6 weeks a producer. And so I looked around and I thought, okay, where can I find a hole? And so the advice to anybody listening and watching is, where is the hole in the organisation you start with? Because there'll always be a department in an agency that needs help. Find the hole and plug it.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's actually a great quote from your book where it's you talk a lot about power players and of course with it being the Power Book. And that's kind of where people go. You use the analogy of people going to chase the ball. And I think that's kind of what you're saying here, right? It's kind of sniffing out that opportunity and putting your head out into the crossfire.
Absolutely. And you know, funnily enough, I hear from a lot of young people, I'm not getting any opportunities. And my response to that is, well, you got to go and make your own breaks. You have to go and make your own opportunity or make your own job. If you're waiting for somebody to offer you something, you'll be waiting a mighty long time. And so you really got to find the gap, the hole, even if it's a little weird hole, make it your own, because it's in that moment that you seize it and you run with it. And it's my experience that most people miss an opportunity when it's standing right in front of them. Believe it or not, they don't see it. They're waiting for something to happen, and yet it is right there in front of their face.
Totally. And that could be things as simple as just doing the stuff that nobody else wants to do. Yeah, I've seen many people get jobs from doing that, from in any vertical as well, irrespective of what department you're in.
That's a great point, Chris. I mean, doing all that crappy stuff that you do as a junior, as a starter, if you just do it and you do it exceptionally well, you'll get a gig. So sniff it out and make it your own. And, you know, there's something really benevolent, something really beautiful about people who do the stuff that nobody wants to do in order to create a job. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And within the book itself, Rose, there's quite a few tips on sort of networking. But in your opinion, what are the sort of top power plays for people trying to expand their network and get ahead?
Funnily enough, the number one, and lately more and more, is if you're going to a function or an event, listen to what the other people in your little circle are saying. Being a really good listener is a terrific power play, just listening and getting their name, asking them questions about their job, asking them what they love about their job, asking them what they do. Funnily enough, if you ask the right questions, you'll get a job out of it. A lot of people, when they're networking, they think weirdly enough, Chris, they need to talk about themselves. No. They need to listen and ask the person that they're listening to a lot of questions.
Yeah. I think a lot of people forget that networking event is a social event. It's I think a lot of people get mistaken that it's also quite transactional. So you get people in there just trying to sell you something or giving you their 30-second pitch of who they are and what they do. But to your point, understanding the why behind what they do straight away separates you from everyone else in the room, right?
Well, Chris, the way you got me to do this is by knowing about me. You knew about my book, you knew about my background. It looked like you did some research. And straight off the bat, this is a guy who's not winging it. He kind of knows something about me. Same concept in networking. Figure out who your target is and find out about them. Ask them a lot of questions. People are very flattered when you're interested in them.
Yeah.
Weirdly enough, most people just talk about themselves, and they never remember to ask a question. Good questions will get you a gig.
Yeah, totally. And your point there, just around doing research and very specific research. There's a chap who's coming in tomorrow for an interview in our organization, and he'd actually looked at agencies that I worked with and then looked at people who he had previously reached out to. And he goes, "Oh, you must have worked with so-and-so at Grey London back in the day." And I go, "Yeah." And I'm like, wow, straight away, it hits a nerve in a weird way.
Yeah.
Not in a bad way, but you kind of go, wow, automatically, this person's not just saying the generic, "I've looked at your website, this looks great." It's super, super bespoke. And for anyone willing to, and anyone listening, if you take that extra couple of steps forward, it really does set you out from everyone else and inherently gets you an interview.
So true. Remember that, everybody.
Yeah, totally. And that actually brings me really nicely into my next point. You're in the interview room and you've managed to reach out to someone, you've hit a personal connection, you're now in the room with them. You have some interesting power plays in your book, but I'm keen to hear from you. What are some of your top tips for going in when you're being interviewed?
Yeah, well, again, do your research, right? Do your research on the company, particularly on the person, but on the products or clients they represent. So often I will throw a live question or a live exercise at an interview candidate. And one of two things happens. They either freak out and they say something like, "Oh my goodness, no one told me I have to do anything live." Or, which of course is, they're out, right? They're not my people at all. Get out right now. It's the end of you and me. Or they go, "Great," and they chew on the problem and they give me an answer live in the moment. So one of the things that I love when interviewees come in, they say, "Well, what are you working on, Rose? Where is a client that you've got a bit of a challenge or a problem? I'll give you an idea of what I would do if I was working on that." That is awesome.
Yeah.
So talk specifically about how you can show that you're braining. You've got a brain in your head. That wins me over every time.
I love what you said there about what are some of the challenges you're having. Here's my 2 cents of how we think we can do that. Before you've even been hired, you're showing value in the room. And, it's kind of the people you want by your side and in your team, people who come to you with a possible solution. It could be completely wrong, but at least you're showing initiative.
And I don't mind that it's wrong. What I love is that they're thinking and they're actually showing me live and in person how they use their brain. And I'm pretty rock and roll. I'm not a hierarchy person. I'm not a fan of buzzwords. I'm not a fan of, frankly, the BS that our industry can sometimes spin up. But
what is this?
What I love is that the first thing I look for, Chris, is a mind at work. And if they've got a good mind, I'll find them a job.
Often the best minds are kind of people that they kind of create a role for themselves without you even really saying anything. Because I've been in that position before where you interview someone and you go, "Wow, don't know what we're going to do with this person, but we'll figure it out because this is, they're just a great mind."
That's exactly right.
Coming towards the end of the interview, you've had an interesting journey. You started your own business, and then you've been with WPP for a long time. If you could go back to yourself at the beginning, sit across the table, what would you say? What would be your advice?
Yeah, funnily enough, the bulk of my career has been in small business. I've only really been in the job now for 5, almost 6 years. So not that long at WPP. But the advice I tell myself is, why not? 2 words, why not? Just jump off a cliff. My father used to say to me as a little kid, if you jump off a cliff, a safety net will appear. best advice, right?
Mm.
So the thing I'd say to myself is, Rose, just keep being fearless, because what's the worst that can happen? Why not? Yeah. And I still say that. I mean, as you get older, you lose your edge because you're older, right? When you're young, I was young and green and stupid when I started my first business. Before I sold it, you don't know anything. You're kind of dumb. You're naive. You want to stay a little bit naive. And so the thing I'd say to myself is, don't worry, it'll be okay. Whatever you screw up, you can fix up.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. It reminds me of a quote from Mark Manson of, you'll never always have the answers. Just keep going forward and the answers will follow. And that's absolutely right. And it's incredibly fulfilling just to go do it, you know, go with your gut. Yeah, and even if you're wrong, I'd rather fail miserably with a hunch than, you know, live with the regret of never giving it a crack.
I agree, Chris. Best thing anyone ever said to me is that there's like a Rose Herceg shaped hole in the wall. You know, the cartoon characters when they hit the wall, you know, when you get something really wrong. But when I get it wrong, full steam ahead, right? It's almost like you go down in a blaze of glory. That is better than sitting on a fence and not making a decision at all.
Yeah.
So to my younger self, to anyone listening to this, just you know what? Jump off a cliff. A safety net will appear. I promise you. Just don't do nothing. Doing nothing is a slow death. Don't do it.
Completely agree. And Rose, as we draw to a close, was there anything else you wanted to add?
No, look, I think the one thing I'd say is have fun. I mean, it's been a horrid year of COVID. I think we've lost the ability to just have fun. And the best work comes when you're having fun. Also, getting a job when you're a fun person to be around will help you get a job. There are too many very serious, very worthy, very interesting people, but I think along the way we kind of lost the humor and the fun of this industry. Let's not do that. It's a great industry, and you know, being a fun person to be around is worth its weight in gold right now.
Absolutely, absolutely. We couldn't need it more right now. And we're at the end of the day, we're a people business.
We are.
So, well, Rose, I can't thank you enough for coming on today. For those of you who haven't read it, give the Power Book a read. Or if you're skint, hit me up and you can borrow mine. But Rose, thank you so much for coming on today.
Chris, thanks for having me and good luck with it. It's a great show.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thanks, mate. Bye.